Today, I want to talk about Henry Lockquinn Goldberg. In the final season of You, Joe contends with the fear that his son inherited his violent nature when Henry starts acting out at school. But will he follow in his father's footsteps? Let's look at what we know about our father and son duo to try and answer that. Both Joe and Henry had unstable early childhoods, and the counselor at Henry School notes that instability in those formative years can have long-term effects. We can see this in Joe, who struggles to form connections with anyone but his current fixation and his stories, as a result of the poverty and homelessness he experienced as a child with his mother. He had nothing but his books and her love to inform his entire worldview. Meanwhile, Henry has spent his childhood housed, bonding with different caretakers and socializing with peers, overall living a much fuller life and forming healthy attachments. He doesn't live in the same kind of survival mode as Joe, who clings to the idea of the one being all he needs in the world because his mother's love was all he had. Compared to Henry, who has so far been loved by 3 dads and 2 moms in his young life, although he may have lost a couple, he hasn't been left alone, his father's own worst fear stemming from being discarded after killing his stepfather. After he was removed from his mother's custody, Joe finds her years later only to be turned away as she tells him that she made too many mistakes and needs to start over completely, effectively throwing him away as he doesn't fit her narrative. Joe never had the chance to learn how to form healthy attachments to anybody else, as he faces bullying from other boys in the group home and abuse at the hands of Mooney. But Henry will be cared for and supported as he grows up. When Joe could have benefited from therapy, he was locked in a cage. But Henry is given the opportunity to talk to somebody about his feelings and will continue to be supported by Kate, who is a strong advocate for the mental health of her loved ones. Henry will have help understanding what has happened and his versus his father's role in it. Unlike Joe, who witnessed the domestic abuse his mother faced and internalized it as his narrow perception of abuse, Henry didn't see his dad hurt anybody. He's just left to contemplate the scars of his father's harm. Throughout the season, Kate gives Henry kid-friendly explanations for Joe's absence and what he's done wrong to keep him feeling grounded during the disruptive time. While Joe tries to screw it up and scar Henry for life, holding Teddy at knife point in the secret apartment, the moment will be discussed in therapy, and Henry will eventually realize that his father being pulled away by security was for the best. Joe feels that Henry must never think he's been abandoned, since that's the main factor he blames for his own dysfunction. So with his father in jail, will Henry grow up to continue the cycle of violence? Is he doomed to be just like Joe? No, probably not. First of all, you don't just become a serial killer because your parents were serial killers. But second, Joe didn't somehow end up a serial killer because his mother left him or because he experienced abuse at Mooney's. He's the product of different life circumstances working against him, forming his distorted worldview and leading him to insulate himself in the comfort of his delusion. He was exposed to abuse firsthand and not just separated from, but rejected by, the one person he formed an attachment with. This is a stark contrast to Henry, who has been shielded from witnessing the worst of his father's violence, allowing him the space to understand everything that's happened when he's old enough to handle it. And while he's moved from home to home, he's always been comfortably cared for and socialized with others, allowing him to have a relatively normal childhood. Joe was raised in an environment where both of his parents failed to protect and provide for him, as his father was victimizing his mother, leaving her unable to properly care for Joe. Sandy tried to escape her abusive relationship, telling Joe that they're out and getting a ride out of town. But with no support system and a child depending on her, she had little choice but to return home. Alternatively, when Kate sets out to unravel her entanglement to Joe, she flies with Henry to London, probably first class. Henry is happy to see his Auntie Lady Phoebe, another connection he has outside of his mother, and excited for their dinner reservations, a drastically different experience than an uneasy Joe being left to wait alone in an unfamiliar city. And regarding their trip, Kate explains to Henry that she's done something bad and needs to make it right, modeling the behavior for him that we face our wrongs and work to correct them, a far cry from Joe's mom justifying his shooting as protecting her, which led him to believe that he can do something horrifically wrong as long as it's for the right reason. While it is concerning that Henry attacked his cousin Gretchen in response to her taunts and threw a butter knife at his Aunt Regan after she threatened their family, Kate doesn't excuse or minimize Henry's lashing out like Joe tries to, indicating that Henry's behavior won't fall into her blind spot. It's safe to say that Kate has learned her lesson through the events of season 5, and her experiences with controlling men like her father and Joe will give her unique insight into how to best set up Henry for success and avoid the pitfalls of the fathers in their family. There's no way to know for sure what kind of man Henry will be, as Bronte notes that's a decision he'll have to make for himself, but the odds are in his favor for him to grow into a well-adjusted, decent guy. At such a young age, he recognized his father's role in the harm caused to Kate and rebuked him as a monster for it. While that might be as simple as string theory emotionally speaking, Henry will be given every opportunity and tool to navigate the messy aftermath and succeed as a person, never struggling with the same hardships as Joe. Joe was shaped by the abuse and neglect of his childhood, carrying his unresolved trauma into his adult life as an excuse for his behavior to shield him from much needed self-reflection, stunting him and holding him back from taking accountability for his actions and growing as a person. But with the financial resources and love of his mother, his connection to a broader family and community around him, and plenty of therapy, Henry will have his whole life ahead of him to become the man that his father wanted to believe he could be and break the cycle of abuse. But what do you think Henry's future holds? Do you think he'll grow up happy and healthy, or is he doomed by his dastardly DNA to repeat the sins of his father? Let me know what you're thinking down in the comments. Be sure to like and subscribe. Please and thank you. Bye.